I didn't really want to make this video, but I'm just gonna make it and pin it because I think it's important to explain. So this is a video pretty much explaining like why it's okay. I will say this. I apologize for what I did. It was not nice. If this is kind of an apology to Timnit Gebru and really anyone else who's like offended by what I did. It was a while ago. Basically, I cursed Timnit out online. I think I said like "fuck you, bitch" or something to that extent. I was pissed, and the reason that I did that is because at the Black and AI dinner in was it 2018? I think it was 2018. You know, I went and that was my second year going, and I was sitting at the table with Joshua Bengio and Jennifer Cheaz, and we took a photo, and I was like, oh, this is awesome, you know, and I wanted the photo, right, to add to my collection of like AI pioneers who I admire. And so it was like 3 weeks after the dinner, I'm back in Washington. I'd pinged her like 6 or 7 times, like, hey, you know, can you send me the photograph? She was just like, oh, I'm gonna get around to it, you know. And after a month, I was just like, bitch, send the photo, you know. Like, it's kind of like you're like, oh, please send it. Oh, okay, let me just remind you to send it. Please send it. And then it's like a month later, it's like, bitch, send the photo, you know. And I was really upset. And I basically did that publicly. I was like, yo, can somebody like call her out for like, you know, not sending it? Now, maybe this sounds really trivial to some people. They're like, why would you get that upset about a photo? You're pathetic. It's not meaningful. It's just a photograph, right? Representation really, really, really matters, because like without it, a lot of people have a lot there. It's easy to forget, which is why, so now, right, all the shit that is happening with Google, now everyone's writing about it and they're making memos about it and making sure there's like a trail of crumbs, right, to really understand and to unpack what happened. Like, oh, here's what really happened. Here's how we should all feel, and everybody take a side, right? But like my side at that point was like, there are no Black Americans who are in AI. I couldn't find any at that time. I did look around. I tried to like scope the field. Everybody there was African. And if you're unfamiliar, like the continental Africans and African Americans don't really see eye to eye about a lot of shit. There is a lot of like real conflict between those groups, those groups where like, you know, continental Africans are coming to America calling African Americans akatas, saying like, we don't have any culture, like we, you know, and while at the same time, this is just my personal feelings, I feel like a lot of the opportunities that like continental Africans have in this country are a direct correlation into work that was done by African Americans, specifically toward like equality. And if you're talking about any sort of like affirmative action type of grants and stuff, those were specifically designed for Black Americans. But this, like, when you're looking at diversity numbers from like university campuses, a lot of their numbers for Black people are like overriding continental Africans. They'll just say like, oh, we're talking about in American universities, it will say like the number of Black students, we have like 5% Black students, but it's like literally the entire 5%, 100% of that 5% is like all continental Africans. So in America, there's no Black Americans at these colleges, right? Like that's a problem. Like if we took the continental Africans out of the picture altogether, then the universities would see like, oh my God, we don't have any Black students at all, and they would, you know, take more steps to like fix the other parts of the pipeline that are broken in order to get those Black Americans to college. But the way that I see it, because there's like representation in terms of skin tone, they just find a continental African, put them on the flyer. Like, we have Black people here now. Like we're really talking about like diversity and inclusion and really equity, no lie, like straight up equity. It's just unfair to have like some people work for some shit, like the descendants of slaves march, like do the like marching with MLK, dying, being beat up by police, rioting, all this stuff, and then have somebody else basically literally steal all the fruits of that labor, which is the same problem that I have specifically like with the immigrant community, when they don't understand, like, it wasn't really like all good in terms of like all ethnic groups welcome until like Black Americans specifically stood up, fought, and died for the right for everyone to have like equality. And so for me, when she was like unwilling to share the picture, it was basically her saying, like, it was like erasing my Black American literal existence from that space, which is like literally what happened. To this day, I don't have the photo. I believe she like deleted the photo. It's literal erasure. And the funny thing to me is now to see what happened with her with Google, it's like the same thing happening. So it's like, it's okay for like her to do it to someone, but it's like not okay when someone does it to her. Like, make it make sense, So I know that like half of Google brain at this point is like completely blocked me in like some sort of like allyship with Timnit, as if like there's like all good and all bad and you have to pick a side. Like, let like what happened with like Google be a very clear like example that like everything isn't black and white. There's not like completely good and completely bad. Like, the world is actually complicated, and there's not, and especially when you're trying to understand, like, there's like basically no Black people in the whole space. So to blacklist someone, especially a Black person, and I mean, like, what Google did with Timnit is nuts, because you're basically saying you don't fuck with Africans at this point, because she is like their token star of hope in terms of like what it means to be an African and be like successful in this country, man. So if you're shitting on Timnit, you're like killing a whole lot of dreams. But I would also say to the people who like took no time to like understand what the dispute between myself and Timnit was, and to just take a side and blacklist me, just remember how many Black Americans that you're like shitting off when you're doing that to me, right? It's like, I literally am like wearing like my Black Panther shirt because I went to a museum, a showcase. It was like a James Baldwin showcase at the museum in San Francisco a while ago, and my friend bought me the sweatshirt. Anyway, like, the Black American experience is like, it's complicated, and just to be very clear, it's hella hard to succeed as like a Black American in this country. Like, it's really hard. There's like racism at every single step. And so when I'm thinking about how hard it was for me to like, navigate my way into tech, are you joking? Like, the reason, like, I think people are like kind of shocked, when I don't like code as much as I used to. And I'm like, at this point, I just don't feel like I have to code. Like, go look at my GitHub repo. Like, my shit I've been a pro since like 2016. Like, I've been here. Like, I've done my work. Like, when I took like Tara's course, Apps Without Code, and saw she was like building whole platforms, no code, like, and even understanding like what AI can actually do versus like how people are using it in industry now, it doesn't make sense to be like just like a code monkey, like, which is, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of like kids coming out of school who like don't know how to build shit and who don't know how products work, so like they should go be code monkeys. But like, I've already done that. At this point, I really feel like my entire existence in the tech space is just about being like literally a representative token of like, here's what it looks like to make it, and explaining that across multiple different ethnic and racial groups, like having to explain and to Latin Americans, Black Americans, continental Africans, white immigrants, white transplants, white natives, really everyone, because I just crossed, so like, I was born here, born and bred here, like I was born in Berkeley, and here I fucking am. Like, see the tower is still there. Is it still there? Still there, still here. Even to see Timnit like talking about something like, oh, from the Bay Area, like where I'm from, like, no, girl, you are not from here. You are a transplant. And I'm not like, no shade. Like, you're from Ethiopia, but like, rep for Ethiopia. Like, Ethiopia's dope too. Like, don't, like, stop making up stories. Words mean things. And all I'm saying is, like, just because you don't understand something and you don't understand the context behind it, like, don't brush it off. There really is a, like, words mean things and people do things for a reason, and like that's real. Like, things aren't just like black and white. People aren't just like good and bad. They're not just like, you know, making up shit. Like, I think another good example in this space is like when Jürgen Schmidhuber called out Jeffrey Hinton for like saying he's like not deserving of the Turing Award. And when I did my research, like, I was like, wow, well, people should really, you know, give him his tokens, because he has been there and he has been doing the work. Like, every single time I read a research paper in reinforcement learning, like, he is cited like multiple times. Like, people need to give that man his coins, like, and stop trying to, like, you know, take credit for ideas that they didn't come up with. You know, let's talk about like academic integrity for a second, because I feel like at this point I'm reading papers that were like written in the 1980s, and people are just like literally resurfacing the same ideas. So I'm gonna leave that there. This is kind of an apology. Like, maybe what I did, the way that I did it was wrong and it made other people uncomfortable, and they're like, oh my god, it wasn't politically correct. Well, no shit, it wasn't, but like, I did it, and like,